I'm Sori.
That's Booby.
And Joel being ghosty.
Entombed-Blessed be. I had a friend in school that used to say that.
Blessed be?
Blessed be, yeah. That was his thing. Okay, this should be interesting. Which alliance was this? Was this an alliance? True Cult, of course. True Cult. Shout out to the big homie Damon. I wonder if my man Simon is in the True Cult still. Simon's mad at me. He's angry at me because of my last Middle America video.
Oh, it was a very good video, actually.
So did I, but apparently we're not very objective in our assessments of how good I did in those videos. Speaking of which, if you would like to know, dear listener, why I am simultaneously the most endearing and yet the most infuriating Homo sapien on the internet, according to my good friend Adar, and why I am so difficult to love, according to my other good friend Peter, that's probably... You can check us out at Middle America with Vin and Sori. Very somber day for the Sanders clan. Speaking of clan, this is the True Cult group. So what happens is $1 at Patreon, right? $1 at the gate gets you into the clan. So we've got a big village, giant village. That's facebook.com/Vin and Sori. Anybody can come in. Anybody can hang out. Big tent. We've got everybody there. It doesn't matter what you like. Doesn't matter what you listen to. And then within that giant village, we've got clans in the on the Patreon section. And then what happens is once you get in, again, it starts at $1 at the gate. There are other tiers, obviously, on Patreon, and you get access to exclusive material. There's videos that we post. We had the Super Saiyan Sori video, things of that nature. The videos that we post on Patreon that we don't post elsewhere. But the main thing about that is that you get basically recruited by a team leader or an alliance leader.
And out on Discord.
Yeah, and it's genre specific. So this is a black metal group. The True Cult is a black metal group. So if you're kind of a black metal person, boom, you get sucked into the True Cult. Then you put your favorite black metal band out there, a song out there, and then they get together and they come to us and say, okay, this is a song we want you to do, and that's what they did. So that's what's going on there. Like I said, patrons, we love you. Thank you very much for everything that you guys do as far as partnering with us. And I hope you guys can see the effort that we're making to make that forum to carry all the bangs for the bucks, because we're putting content up there like crazy. So, okay, I'm actually pretty excited to hear this song though. Entombed-Blessed be, is it? Get the lyrics fired up, get the music fired up, and go.
Go.
Look, I hope you like what you see.
Fast moving one.
I think the second part of the song kind of gave me more of a clue as to what he was talking about. I don't know. I don't think this is necessarily black metal. Was this death metal? Was that what they classified it as?
No, they didn't say.
I feel like this is a death metal song, and these guys are probably one of these like essential sort of like death metal records. Like it just get that kind of feel from it. So the name of the record is Clandestine. Sinners Bleed, Living Dead, yada yada yada. What did you think the song was about? Before
I really didn't. I deleted our wedding video right before this video started, so I was having a hard time. Okay, should I delete that?
I mean, now if you want to share it with the people, go for it.
Just had a day that was like really busy, and I knew I was gonna make some giant mistake, and I'm so sad that it was that. So can you just tell me what it's about?
So step inside yourself and emerge. Enter a realm of worlds. There's more behind, more to find. You're living through eyes so blind, embedded in hollowness. A future lies marked out before your feet. Don't break the circle. Play your part. Remain silent in your seat. So this could be anything, but I think the second half of the song made me say, okay, he's going after a religious person, because the second half, I'll show you heaven, take you where you've never been. You'll be a man before mine in a land before sin. That's a crazy.
Yeah.
Those two lines are crazy. Even just saying them off of your mouth, you'll be a man before mine in a land before sin. I just love that stuff from my hip hop days. There are some sentences and structures that just sound cool to say. Where you've never been, you'll be a man before mine in a land before sin. I like that. You must pretend that you are everything that you're not. Look down upon what you've been and give away all you've got, which is sort of like the ideal Christian, right? Like the guy who looks at who he used to be, his past life, looks down on that, and then gives away all that he has. No mistakes are ever made. Predestined, you must let all insects fade. Entrapment based within the instincts fade. Yeah. Entrapment based within thee, but you will always be blessed be. So it's basically, I think it's a kind of a challenge of saying the trade-off from being a blessed person in religion is that you have to deny everything that you are. You have to pretend to be this person that you're not. Mm-hmm. You've got to give away everything. And like, is that worth it to be a blessed person?
Oh, wow.
You know what I mean? And so that's what the second half of the song said to me. So if I'm reading that up into the first couple verses, you know, remain silent in the seat, don't break the circle, play your part.
Oh, wow.
This verse is there on the lyrics, but it wasn't in the song. Frustration may be all you feel, all you have inside, but remember thy existence is nothing but what you make it. Virtual reality or merely fake it. Be a shadow in the dark, erased and blanked, you'll fall apart. Be nothing else. Blessed be thee who lost yourself. So again, it's kind of like you're losing yourself in this religion, yada, yada, yada. Mm-hmm. Which speaks to something really interesting to me as far as like how people identify themselves or what people identify themselves as. So for example, if you say like, you're losing yourself into this religion, what does that mean? Mm-hmm. Does that mean that everything that they stopped doing was part of who they were? Do we make a distinction between what people do, even the relations people have, and who people actually are as people? I remember being, you know, in high school, I would watch Dawson's Creek. Mm-hmm. And, you know, the show was kind of funny because the dialogue was basically the dialogue that a 30-something would have. But these kids were supposed to be teenagers. Mm-hmm. So, you know, Dawson was kind of like, he was supposed to be like the 16-year-old, and he'd be like, I just don't understand the ramifications of this relationship considering we had a purely platonic existence prior to us hitting puberty. It's like, nobody talks like that at 16 years old. But I loved that show as a kid. You know, 16 years old, there I was in the Bronx, New York. I loved Dawson's Creek. What was the name?
Oh, Dawson's Creek.
I don't care what anybody says. I loved it. Loved Dawson, loved Joey, loved Pacey, loved the whole crew.
Another thing I wasn't allowed to watch.
But one of the things that really got me about that show was they were constantly talking about, I'm trying to find who I am, or I'm trying to figure out who I am. And it was always frustrating, like, what do you mean? Like, you're Dawson, what are you talking about? You're trying to figure out who you are. And to this moment, I don't necessarily understand what that phrase actually is supposed to mean. When people don't understand themselves, they don't reflect long enough to figure out who they are. One of the reasons that I don't understand that phrase is because nobody is the same person over time.
Yeah, I think sometimes when people say it, it's because they've made changes in who they were and they feel like they shouldn't have made changes, and so they feel like they've lost themselves. And I think sometimes other people are saying it, and I don't think that they would be able to explain what I'm about to say, but I think that, well, we believe that people are made up of body, soul, and spirit. And I think that when they don't feel like those are aligned, then they don't feel like that they don't know who they are. So I think that lining all of those things up and getting a holistic feel for yourself can be...
Yeah, but even in that situation, I mean, a person can be completely aligned and still be a different person than they are in the next 10 years. So that was always my problem, and maybe it had to do with moving around as much as I did, and so I was always incarnating in some new... You know, when I was in Maine, there were certain aspects of my personality that was emphasized because you're living in Maine. When you're in Florida, there are certain aspects of your personality that are emphasized because you're in Florida. And when you're in Parsippany, New Jersey, there's certain aspects of your personality. And then when you get to the Bronx, there's certain aspects of your personality that get emphasized. So I always, like, that always confused me. So, like, when he's talking about, like, you know, losing yourself and things of that nature, I'm like, okay, what does that mean? And what does that mean for growth? And then the sort of resentment people have towards people when they find religion. There is a certain type of resentment that people have, especially when you start saying, I used to be this person, but God changed me. And then there's this sort of like, oh, you gave up who you were for your religion. No. No. It simply means that they're evolving as a person. and it just so happens that the catalyst for that evolution, in our worldview, obviously, is Jesus. And it seems to me that people feel threatened by people who have like radical changes. Like I remember the response to Head from Korn when he became a Christian, and people were going crazy, and all he was saying was, let's love each other, let's follow Jesus, I believe in Jesus, yeah. And we've had conversation, he admits that he was kind of a little bit weird, but like if you're a rock star, you're weird already. So you'd figure that people would say, well, I mean, what would you expect from a metalhead? You think he's going to sit in church and...
Right.
And
Yeah.
It was very interesting.
Yeah.
And like I said, like in previous videos, the metal community has absolutely embraced us as Christians. We've I mean, as far as Nergal giving a shout out on stage and happy that we're Christians reviewing his music. So I'm not talking about us per se. I think we get passes to some degree with some people. But it does come out like, your religion is,
Yeah, it does come out. But I do think that because we've spoken honestly about what we think objectively about the church, or as objectively as we can, about the church and about Christians and who we've been and stuff like that, I think that kind of makes people feel more comfortable to say, well, okay.
Yeah, no, I agree. But I think it's a very strange thing when a person starts celebrating that they left certain things behind, where there immediately has to be this sort of skepticism or cynical view of that person.
Yeah.
They'll go, oh, now you found religion, you left it. Yeah. These were destructive mindsets and destructive actions. They left them behind. And I think to some degree it's sort of like there has to be this assumption that this is something that is forced on you from the outside in, and not what the person is actually saying out of their own mouth, which is, no, this is coming from the inside out. There just has to be this desire to invalidate what these people are saying about their own lived experience. And in our current milieu, it's very strange, because that's kind of like one of the main heresies of our day, is to invalidate somebody's lived experience. But the minute a person says, hey, I was sleeping around a lot, and then I met Jesus, and now I'm in a healthy monogamous. Oh, you're letting the conventions of the patriarch, blah blah blah. It's like, why don't we just take them at their word? That God is working in them, and they don't believe that that's a healthy way to live, either physically or emotionally, not only for himself but all the other women that he was using in his whole life. But there's this sort of cynical, and there is virtual reality or merely fake it. And look, are there poser Christians? Sure, but they're posers in everything. Subculture. But why is there this sort of like, oh, if you're a Christian, you're faking it. You're definitely faking it. And some of it is disconcerting because some of these changes are so radical. Like we've seen a bunch of new Christians, bless God, and there's a spectrum. Like there's some people that are like, it's kind of like inches away at them, and then they wake up and they go, I believe all of this. This is like reality for me. And then you go, oh, okay, well then you're a Christian. Yep. And then you just move. Like that, I've had those conversations, and then you just kind of treat it nonchalant, and you don't like make a giant deal out of it, because the person their disposition is just, oh, I believe all this stuff. I suppose I should get baptized. Yes, you should. And then there's other people that are like, whoa!
Yeah.
We had this girl who was, very liberal with her body, put it that way, and she was ending up on Instagram sometime, or YouTube, or whatever. And now she's the complete opposite. I'm talking the complete opposite of that, and is more, what you could say, radical than we are. And she, and I think that's great. God affects some people that way, and so it's like, I watch people and they're like, well, I'm concerned for you. You had all these amazing changes, these different changes, and and there's this automatic sort of cynical idea that they're only doing this because they're being forced to, and it's like, oh, How about we just take people at their word, right?
I think there are times where people make changes because they're forced to.
I agree.
I mean, how can you project that onto somebody else and make your assumptions when you really don't know?
Well, yeah, and it's weird considering our current seats in Laban, right? Like if a person says, I'm trans and I felt that I was trans since I was 4 years old, I am inclined to believe them. Mm-hmm. I'm not going to say some people say, well, that's because there's a societal blah, blah, blah. Are there fake trans people who want to be down? Absolutely. Mm-hmm. I know some of them. Yeah, yes, there are. But are there genuine, real people who since 3 years old have felt, two-spirited or whatever you want? Of course. Like that's, but what happens is religious people go out of their way to invalidate those people because they point to the poser. And there's a massive rate of people going back from trans, they're very, very complex situation. But I'm not going to take that and broad brush the entire community.
That's really dangerous to just broad brush.
Right? So I'm going to go, okay, if you're saying that, I'm going to say that that's an inside out thing. Mm-hmm. And then the guy that flipped, I'll say, okay, that was outside in. Mm-hmm. But, this sort of cynical idea that, if you do these things and you repudiate who you used to be, then all of a sudden that's because you're being, forced into it. And then there's a whole, you're blind, which is, of course, people can be blinded by religion. Mm-hmm. Of course people can be blinded by religion. That's 100% true. Sometimes I want to ask people, is it possible that maybe you're the blind one? Serious question. Mm-hmm. I mean, serious question. I mean, it's almost a question that some, know what I said? Some. I know exactly what's going to happen in the comment section. Some of my atheistic friends don't even countenance the idea. Well, maybe I could be wrong about this. Maybe the whole thing is wrong. Mm-hmm. Maybe everything I'm saying. Maybe these crazy people are actually right. And there's this sort of, you guys are blinded by the light, you're blinded by your religion, which I will gladly say that there are a myriad of examples in my personal life and in the history of the world where that's the case. Mm-hmm. But are we sure that that's all there is to it? Or maybe it is good to give up all that you were before. Nobody says to a butterfly, man, this is really, you used to be a caterpillar. And now, subhanAllah, you don't look anything like you used to before. Mm-hmm. So it's just, I'm not offended by the song at all, if that's what he's saying. Especially in the last stanza, where it's kind of but you will always be blessed be, which is kind of hey, you made it, in a sarcastic way. I'm not offended by it. I'm just saying, where is the area for? I'd love to see a person reflecting on maybe I'm wrong about this whole religious thing. Mm-hmm. That would be really cool. Not because I don't believe that I'm responsible or you're responsible or anybody's responsible for making somebody a Christian. I don't believe that. Right. But it would be cool just on a intellectual level to see, okay, this guy's really open-minded and really testing all possibilities and struggling through it in music. Because I gotta tell you guys, I have seen lots of Christians. I have talked to probably hundreds of Christians who struggle with some aspect of their faith. They look something in the face and go, nah, and they have that doubt and all the rest of it. And so I fielded literally hundreds, maybe, I'm estimating low, but it's probably thousands of questions about that. There's a very big primer, especially depending on what Christian subculture you're in, to really question these things and throw them against the wall. This idea that Christians are just walking around slavishly believing everything. Mm-hmm. No, that happens in the congregation. Mm-hmm. But when a Christian finds someone that is kind of a little bit older in the faith, that they can bounce the questions off of in a safe context, the questions come flying.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I'd always tell people,
that's what I was going to say. I mean, we've had times where we've questioned our faith, but there are certain things that bring you to the point where you're oh no. Sometimes I'll be wait a minute, what if I've been tricked? And then, there are certain things that I think of and I'm no.
Right. But I'm not. Okay, so I received a couple emails this week, and I'm not going to name them. And if I haven't responded to you, I will. We'll probably all jump into some sort of video chat at some point. But so I've met a couple atheists who are like, kind of like, I'm not with you on the Christianity thing, but I'm starting to doubt my doubts. Okay, and again, it's not my job to convert anybody to Christianity. As a matter of fact, I believe it's impossible for me to convert a single soul to Christianity. That's why I say all the time, we've been fortunate enough to be around people when God decides to change their hearts. You know?
Yep.
So what I'm about to say, I'm qualifying by saying, you know, there's a group that have, but it doesn't seem to be like the modern neo-atheists, the YouTube atheists, the Sam Harris atheists have really rigorously tried to chip away at their own doubts. You know, in the same way that, but then again, I say to myself, well, wait a second, Vin, because a YouTube atheist is by default in social media, and you just said that people in a church group context would never air out their doubts. They wait till they're one-on-one. So how do you know? I'm talking to myself out loud right now. I'm kind of disagreeing with the point I just made 2 minutes ago. First time in Vin and Sori history. How do you know that they're not doubting their doubts, but they're putting that out in social media so as to find one safe person by whom they can throw that stuff against the wall without being, you know, outed or whatever? Because I'll tell you what, if you want to talk about an unforgiving,
well, you don't know.
If you want to talk about an unforgiving group of people, I'm in a forum where a couple atheists went from atheist to theist. You know, one of them became a Muslim, one of them became a kind of Christian, and the vitriol and the attacks on these people it's like no joke. So I understand why, and it's just like with religious people, right? Somebody leaves a religion, they get, you know, castigated, you know, whatever. So I think it's a good song. I think it's a good criticism for a stereotype of Christianity, but I also think it's a good criticism for everybody. I think it was John MacArthur on Larry King, and you know, Larry King was like, well, you believe that you're right all the time. And John MacArthur said, anytime there's an argument, both sides believe they're right.
Right. Otherwise, there would be no argument.
What a silly thing to say. Like, if I didn't think I was right, then I wouldn't argue it.
Right.
And neither would you.
Right.
Unless you're trying to play devil's advocate. So, yeah. I think that there's absolutely a critique of I think the biggest takeaway I would take from this would be, it's good to find somebody who's kind of like safe to do that with, but I think you should say these things in a group context in a church. You should say that you have those types of doubts and things like that in a group context. Like, this song would challenge me to do that. Go ahead.
Well, yeah, I just think that there are some places where that's not safe. They don't encourage those types of questions, and if you do and you voice that, like, it can go not well for you. It just depends on, you know, what type of church you're in and what group of people it is.
True.
You know, some people, obviously, we're like, question it. Ask us questions. We're good with that. Question our faith. But not everybody feels that way. Some people are full of fear. And so it causes them to react negatively when they hear questions, because I think it feeds the questions in their own heart. I mean, I don't know.
I just got out of this thread where there's this person who's a medical professional.
Right.
And she was talking about vaccinations.
Yeah.
And the Christian said, "You're so deceived," and basically called this girl the Antichrist. Now, keep in mind, in that entire thread, she was the only healthcare professional. But what does she know?
Right.
Anyway, what do you get the song?
I guess for the genre it is, or what I think that it is, it's probably like a 9.1.
Okay. 9.1. 9.4. I thought it was a very, very smart lyrics. So 9.4 for me. There you are, dear listener. Vin out.
Sori out.
Down.